Hello and welcome back to the Joyful Soul Creates. Charlotte here, and today I'm sharing a card that almost defeated me, and that's not an exaggeration, it's not clickbait. I've paused this footage just to talk about this because this card took me 2 hours to make. It was a lot of trial and error, caused me huge problems. I wanted to give up on it several times, but I persevered. I think it worked out alright eventually, but yeah, it was such a problem. I nearly gave up and just gave up card making completely. Okay, not really, but it definitely was not a fun experience for a big chunk of the time. But yeah, I'd love to know if you think it was worth it in the end. So without further ado, let's unpause this and get on with the video. So first up, I'm going to need to cut out all my magic iris elements. I think I called it a reveal wheel just now, but it's a magic iris. I need 3 of the donut rings, 3 stabilizers, 3 of the sausage shaped things, and I will also need a pull tab, which I didn't actually cut out yet. All of these I'm cutting out from snippets. I used grey for the main parts of the magic iris. I still keep wanting to call that a reveal wheel, and a kind of pearlized brown for the sausagey iris parts. I also have this clock die that's from a previous Love from Lizi kit. I guess it's a pocket watch, not a clock. I cut that from some gold card, and then that inner piece with the tick marks or whatever from the same pearlized card I'd used for the sausages. The iris pieces. All the bits I'm using here are snippets, by the way. I also cut a circle of black card, which is like a matte, almost chalkboard finish card, to go behind the clock to fill it in. And I fussy cut away the center of that, but I later realized I could just die cut with that same tick mark die, and that would work to make a much neater circle, so I will do that in a moment. I used my glue pen to adhere the inner circle of the clock to the main body of the clock. It's very narrow, so it had slightly warped, so I just brought in the negative part from the center and used that to help me get it properly positioned, and then took that negative part out again. Now, I have looked online already to try and see if I can find this clock separately, this pocket watch die, to link to you, because as I said, this was from a Love from Lizi card kit, and I could not find it anywhere. I do realise now I didn't actually check to see if Lizi has it individually on her site, so I will check for that. But if not, I did find a couple of other options that might work as alternatives, so I will have those linked in the description box below, and they will be affiliate links where possible. I did notice this morning when I woke up a new affiliate link sale, which always makes me super happy, so thank you whoever did that. Each affiliate link sale helps towards my goal of hopefully one day being able to have this as my full-time job. Okay, so after I finished assembling my clock, I'm going to start working on the reveal wheel, and oh my word, the trouble this caused. So one of the rings I have, I'm going to use this piece that I think looks like a 3-legged octopus. I don't know why I think that, but that's what I'm going to be calling it. I will line it up onto one of the rings into the center, and this is going to create the slots and guidelines for my sausage pieces and stabilizers. I did watch a video of another crafty YouTuber putting this together before I made it, and made lots of notes so that I would know what I was doing. I still managed to do it wrong, but that's besides the point. So I slotted my sausage shaped pieces into place through the openings cut with the octopus die. I then flipped over and put tape onto the stabilizer areas, although I shouldn't have done that quite yet. First, I needed to flip it back over, get those sausage pieces back into position, and I need to put glue dots onto the little X marks on the sausages. I do not own glue dots, so I thought I would be clever and use the glue dots from the die packaging that holds the dies in place. It's recycling. I don't use them to store my dies anyway, as noted in yesterday's video, so I thought I'd make use of them here. Spoiler alert, this is a bad idea. They're not strong enough, I think. It just didn't work. But we'll get back to that. So with the glue dots in place, you put the next ring on top, flip over, That's when you want to put the tape on for the stabilizers or use an adhesive runner, whichever you have. I don't have a tape runner, I just used double-sided tape. Remove the backing from that and put the stabilizers into place. So again, we have 3 of those stabilizers, and those nice little stitched areas from the octopus die show how we want those positioned. Then we need to flip the whole thing over again. We have it flat on the table and we rotate it so one of the stabilizers is pointing directly towards us. That's when I remembered I hadn't cut out the pull tab, so I went and did that, again using that pearlized brown card. We want to line up the inner curve of that with the inner circle of the ring, and again I'm going to use double-sided tape as my adhesive. You can use tape runner if you have that. I don't think liquid glue would be a good idea because it just takes too long to set. So we want to line it up with the inner circle of the ring, as I said, and you're making a V shape with that other stabilizer, as you can see. I think maybe I could have got mine slightly closer to the other stabilizer, I'm not sure. Then we're putting more double-sided tape onto the ends of the stabilizers, and this is going to hold the next ring in place in just a moment. So with those on, we'll take the next ring, place it on top, so we're sandwiching that pull tab into place. Take the backing paper off of the double-sided tape and fold the stabilizers over to adhere it to that top ring. The stabilizer should not be reaching all the way to the center, we don't want this super tight, so I found mine were coming about up to the inner stitched line. I think maybe I could have gone a smidge tighter because the edges of the stabilizers do show on the final design, but it's not a huge deal. Okay, I'm going to interrupt myself for a second here and I hope you'll forgive me, but as I was editing this, I just spotted that I've made it through to the next round of the Creative Scrapbooker Magazine's Card of the Month, as you can see here. And I was so excited to see that, so I just wanted to say a huge thank you to everyone who voted for me so far. You can see I voted for myself, obviously. So I just wanted to ask if you would please vote again and see if I can get further on. I would love to make it here. I mean, ultimately, I would love to get to the final and be the actual card of the month. That would be amazing. But you know, each step I can make would just be absolutely wonderful. So I will have the link to the website for voting in the description box below as always. You just need to click my bracket and click vote, and then it will also take you on through so you can vote on the other matchups as well. And there are so many really wonderful entries this month that, well, all months there have been, and the competition is really tough. So I'm just so honoured to be a part of this and so grateful to all of you who have voted. And I was thinking if I do manage to make it to the final and become the card of the month, then I might just add an extra prize to my giveaway. Maybe that will be an incentive to get you to vote. That's what I was popping in to say from the future. Sorry for interrupting. Back to the video, and yeah, back to making the card. So that finished assembling the iris, and I tried it out and it worked, and then it didn't work. The sausage pieces kind of slid out of place and wouldn't go back in when I was opening the iris, so I spent ages fiddling trying to work that out. I kind of eased it open, pulled the dots off, put new dots in, tried liquid glue. Yeah, none of it worked. So I ripped it apart, as you can see here, very carefully. Luckily, I didn't actually tear anything, so I didn't have to recut anything, and I was able to use all the pieces I had already die cut, so nothing went to waste. Here you can see I'm trying to work out if I can salvage it from how it already is. I don't understand why it wasn't turning. Yeah, this die set is like some kind of magical thing. I really don't understand the logic of how it works. I could not get my brain around it. I understand now how to get it put together, but I still don't understand how those pieces move if they're adhered in place. It just doesn't make sense. I don't know. If you know, explain to me, because I feel really stupid right now. But there we go. So I finished pulling the pieces apart. I will use my adhesive eraser just to get the worst of the adhesive off of them and neaten them up a bit. And then I decided I would try double-sided tape because, again, I don't have glue dots and I wasn't about to give up and go and buy glue dots. First of all, because I don't know where I would buy them from. There's nowhere local to me that I could get them. And also because I needed this for a design team project that probably already went live this morning. I'm imagining that I'm going to get this video out in the evening. So if you've visited my blog, you'll have already seen the blog post for this, because I don't think I'm going to get this out at the same time because I have other things to do this morning, unfortunately. So yeah. Anyway, I made some little pieces of double-sided tape and stuck those over the X's. Take the backing off and we'll repeat the assembly process. So we're going to put the next ring on, making sure that the pull tab that's already adhered to it creates a V with one of the stabilizers. I put something heavy on it just to make sure it would properly press down, and then brought the next ring in and put the stabilizers over to hold that in place, and then the iris is done, I think. It is a little bit fiddly to turn when it's just on the desk, and I was very excited that it was working. But it's easier to turn once you get it on the card. So I was planning on making this into a shaker, so the iris would open and there would be a shaker behind it. But by this point I was kind of fed up, so I gave up on that idea. Maybe I'll do that another time. I want my pocket watch to look as though it's on a table, so I found some wooden flat paper from the same kit that the watch came in. I will try and see if I can find this paper separately and link to that below as well. And I die cut the ring from that where I want my watch to be positioned, so that ring can hide the workings of my iris. And of course I want to make sure it's more or less lined up as well. I'm going to spend a little while fiddling, working out exactly how I want this positioned before I adhere the wooden ring onto the top of the iris, because of course I want to make sure that wooden ring on the top is going to be kind of lined up. So once I was happy with that, I did adhere it into place. I put my tape only on the stabilizers because I'd forgotten to write down if you can tape over the whole thing. I'm fairly sure you can tape over the whole thing at this point because that top ring doesn't need to be able to move, but I just stuck it on the stabilizers just to be on the safe side here. So I got that adhesive into place again, brought my wooden ring back and put that in place, trying to line it up as best I could and then pressing it down. I do apologise for how long this video is, but it's an interactive card and I wanted to make sure you could see how to do it. And I did try to keep in how I fix things, apart from fiddling around those sausages when they weren't working earlier, because I spent so much time on it and this video would be ridiculously long if I did that. So here, when I tested again, one of the sausages was not working and I was very upset. I didn't want to have to take it apart again, and I didn't want to have to start over, and I didn't want to waste this. So what I did was I carefully lifted each piece up, put some more double-sided tape in, held onto it tightly to press it down, tried to see if that helped, and I'm not sure if that was the same one or one of the other ones now coming out. So I repeated the process with more double-sided tape and getting it adhered into place. Reverse tweezers are really handy here for getting those little pieces in and being able to pull the backing tape off of them as well. I then decided that clearly this wasn't sticking down well enough, so I used my bone folder to burnish each of the adhered areas of those sausage pieces to make sure they were nicely stuck down. And then I tried it again carefully because I didn't want to break it. And this time it was working. I didn't celebrate this time because clearly my previous celebration was premature, but this time did seem to do the trick. Every time I've used it since then, it has not broken. I hope it continues to not break. I don't know what I'll do if it breaks again. Probably throw it in the bin. Not really. I hate throwing things away if I don't have to. I'd probably just put it on a shelf to wait to be fixed and then forget about it for years, which may or may not have happened with another card, but let's not talk about that. So I tacked my ring into place on my background panel so that I knew where I wanted it, and then I was checking the video just to make sure, because the tabs at the back of the sausages kind of stick out when it's open, and I remembered from the video that you can fold them in, but I wanted to check exactly like how you do that. I didn't want to fold them wrong and break the whole thing again. But basically you just fold those tabs back on themselves and then they won't be poking out from the edges of the ring anymore. And you can see what I did, so if my speech is not making sense, then look at the video and you can see what I did. Next, I need to adhere these pieces to my card base. Here you definitely only want to put the adhesive on the stabilizer. On the top part of the ring, as I said, I'm fairly sure you can adhere anywhere because that doesn't need to be able to move. But here you do need to be able to have those bits moving. So you only want to put the adhesive onto the stabilizers. We're also going to put adhesive onto the panel whilst I'm at it. And again, I'm using double-sided tape here. The next thing I decided to do was add some acetate to the back of my clock. Even though I'd given up on the idea of it being a shaker, I thought with it being a clock it should have a kind of glassy looking face, and so that's where the acetate came in. So I just put double-sided tape all around the back of the black ring, adhered it onto the acetate, cut off the excess acetate, and then I will put more double-sided tape to adhere that onto the magic iris. The opening of the clock is actually smaller than the opening of the iris, but that doesn't matter. It's better than it being the other way around, of course, because this way there's no edges of the ring showing from behind the clock and the iris works fine. So yeah, it just means you don't have to open the iris all the way for it to appear open through the clock face. So I got that clock stuck onto the ring, trying to center the center of the iris into the center of the clock face. And then I was about to adhere it all to the card base when I realised I need to have something to show through the iris. There's no point having the iris opening and just being a blank card base behind. I mean, I guess you could do that. I don't know why. Is there a reason to do that? Yeah, I can't think of why you would want to do that, but maybe you would. As previously discussed, I was kind of fed up and just wanting to get everything done at this point, so I tried to find a piece of pattern paper to go behind that would be kind of autumnal because, and I totally forgot to mention this earlier, this is inspired by a quote. That's what the design team, I think I mentioned this is for a design team project, that's what the design team inspiration is. The quote we're taking inspiration from is, "If a year was tucked inside a clock, then autumn would be the magic hour." So I have my clock element and I want to add an autumn element. So I thought I would add some pattern paper with an autumn theme. Didn't have any that I could find, no leafy pattern paper. I'm sure I have some somewhere, but apparently not. Instead, I decided to use one of the inner grey rings left from cutting out all those grey ring pieces, and I found a stamp set, I think it was called Thanks and Leaves, from a Simon Says Stamp card kit, which had some leaves obviously, and I decided I would use those and make my own little piece of patterned paper of sorts. So I arranged those onto the circle, held the circle down in my MISTI with some washi tape, and then I'm going to stamp these to look like autumn leaves. I do this by layering the ink. First, I will stamp it with Squeeze Lemonade Distress Oxide. I didn't actually prep my stamps, and this is the first time I've used these stamps, so it was looking a bit blotchy, but I knew I would be restamping them, so it didn't matter too much. I did spread the ink a little with the blending tool I used for the Squeeze Lemonade. It's not a very good colour against the grey, but that's okay, that's only the first layer, so I'll wipe those off, and then we're going to come in again, this time with Wild Honey. And I'm not inking up the leaves completely this time, I'm kind of slightly going around the edge. I'll blend it out again with the blending tool for the Wild Honey and stamp that over. And it's still not standing out great against the circle, but it's looking better. Wipe it off again, and this is why the MISTI is so important. I would never be able to get this lined up if I was doing it by hand. Next colour we have is Festive Berries, and I'm trying to go just around the very edges of the leaves, which is a little bit difficult with this big ink pad, but perseverance, patience, it pays off. That should be the motto of this card. Perseverance. Yeah, the card took a lot of perseverance. Anyway, ink the edges with the Festive Berries, dab it out with the blending sponge, and stamp again, and here you can see those leaves are really starting to stand out now. I could have left it there, but I did decide to add just a little more definition. I have tea dye Distress ink, not oxide this time, just the ink. And I'm just going along the vines of the leaves with this one. Distress ink isn't actually great for stamping, but that's fine because I didn't really want super defined lines. I was just trying to add a little something extra to the design. So that finished up the leaves. I then needed to add a sentiment to it. So I used my Colour My Life app to look for something suitable. I thought I would just use a hello. In hindsight, I'd actually wanted this to be a birthday card, but you know, my mind was just, I was just dead by this point. I couldn't think. So a hello it was, a nice small one just to fit in that circle and to show nicely through the iris. I stamped it with VersaFine Onyx Black ink. I didn't use my Misty for a change. I used a lid from another ink pad because I don't have tiny acrylic blocks, and I find that lids from ink pads work well enough, so that's what I did. Okay, so with that circle ready, I positioned it into the ring of the iris to make sure it would be lined up nicely. Opened the iris to make sure I had the hello more or less straight, and once I was happy with that, I flipped it over and put adhesive onto the back. I then used a piece of washi tape just to hold that circle onto the ring so that I could remove the backing from my tape, flip the panel over and push it onto the card base to get that circle into the correct position, even though nothing else has been stuck down. Just make sure everything is nicely lined up. I can then lift up the rest of the panel and pull out that piece of washi tape, and that's that part done. The next piece is the iris. I'm going to adhere that next. Might have been easier, probably would have been easier to adhere the actual panel next, but this way worked well enough. It was fine. It didn't cause a problem. So the video I saw said that you should adhere with the iris closed because you want to make sure that the handle's not going to be sticking out past the edge of the card when you're posting it with it closed. This wasn't such a problem for me because I'd already worked out the positioning with the panel anyway, so actually I could have adhered it open, but I think it's probably a good habit to adhere it down closed just to make sure that you're getting the handle in the right place. So with that stuck down, I carefully pulled out the backing panel after making sure that the iris worked. Took the backing tape off the double-sided tape on that, and then I'll wiggle it back over the iris and adhere that to the card base, which again took a little bit of wiggling, and as I said, it probably would have been easier to get the panel down first and then add the iris, but whatever, it worked. I'm trying to make sure it's straight with the iris, straight with the sides of the card base, and then I'll push that into place. And I'm going to just put a little glue onto the handle of the pocket watch to make sure it's not flapping around too much. Now this design team project is for the mailroom, and as discussed, it's a quote. I will have a link to the mailroom craft challenge if you're inspired by this quote and want to come and play along with us. All you have to do is make a masculine project with the quote as the inspiration point. Now is probably as good a time as any to ask the question for today's Rafflecopter entry for my ongoing Celebration Month giveaway. So I guess my question is, what's your favourite kind of interactive card to make? And also, if you have any tips on how to not lose your patience when everything's going wrong, then maybe leave that in the comments below as well. And remember to click over to the Rafflecopter linked in the description box and let it know that you have entered. I did finish off my card by adding some dots. These are wooden dots from another Love from Lizi kit, and I just thought they were perfect to finish off this design. I do realise I didn't actually add hands to my clock. I've decided it doesn't matter. My plan had been to add hands, but of course with the sentiment being behind the iris, putting hands onto that acetate piece would just cover up the sentiment, so I decided not to bother. So here you can see the finished card. I think it was worth it in the end, even though when I was done I just didn't ever want to look at it again, but I had to look at it to do the photos and the blog post and this video, and it's grown on me. I quite like it. I'm pretty proud of myself for getting it done. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you for liking, commenting and subscribing. There's a couple of other videos showing on screen if you'd like to see more from me straight away. Otherwise, I'll hope you'll join me again tomorrow for the next video. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you again next time. Bye!